Hello and welcome to the Retail Sales Experience webinar by Grist. Thank you all for making the time to discuss the future of retail in Australia and New Zealand. If you're anything like most of the sales and service leaders that I know, you haven't been sitting around with your feet up on the desk waiting for me to come and fill up your time, so we do appreciate that you've made the time available today. We've deliberately kept the webinar short and sharp to try and fit into your busy schedule, so let's just get straight into it. For those that don't know me, my name is Peter Grist and the company is called Grist. At Grist we are about helping organisations align the behaviour of their front line with the business's value proposition and objectives. And we primarily do this by providing behavioural benchmarking and designing and delivering change programs. Our main focus with regard to that capability is in sales and service organisations where we've been working for 25 years. The webinar today is primarily aimed at the financial services, general insurance, health insurance and telecommunications. And when I'm discussing and using the word retail, I'm primarily referring to face-to-face selling in either branches or out in the field, for instance, mobile bankers and BDMs. So let's just go through what we're going to cover today. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the major trends in customer behaviour that are impacting on retail. I'm sure most of you are aware of some of these already. Next, we'll discuss what this means for the future value proposition of retail and branches and stores. Following this, we'll have a look at some benchmarking we've conducted that is really aimed at helping retail understand how well it's positioned to deliver the value proposition of the future. We'll then focus on what needs to be done to ensure retail remains relevant and have a look at some things you can do immediately to get a feel for how well your organisation is positioned for the challenge ahead. As we go through, please ask as many questions as you can. To do this, if you see on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a dashboard, and down in the dashboard around the middle there's a section that says questions. You can certainly send questions through to us at any time. So whilst we won't be answering the questions during the webinar, we will guarantee that we will get back to you following the webinar and make sure that we answer your questions. Okay, so sorry, I'm just getting my computer to work here. The next slide here that you can see, I thought this was a quote, was a good way to start as it sums up my general feeling about what we're going to discuss today. It's a quote by Mark Twain, who was responding to reports in a British newspaper that he was dead. We only have to go back to the 70s or the 80s when telephone banking was taking off to see an example of retail being written off, and banks, particularly banks at that stage, were closing branches, only to see this trend reversed in the following decades. According to the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority, APRA, from 2001 to 2012, the number of retail banking outlets grew every year to the point where there are around 6,500 today. So there is a lot of doomsday talk about the future of retail given the rise of other channels and the changing consumer preferences. However, we believe that there is a future for retail, but only if it can deliver a unique value proposition that sets it apart from other lower cost channels. So let's have a look at some of the trends that are impacting the retail channel. The first prediction that we've got on the screen here comes from the 2014 McKinsey report that looks at the future of retail banking. As you can see, McKinsey are predicting that within 5 years, 95% of all transactions will take place in a channel other than retail. So given that the companies that we work with report that around 70% of all of their foot traffic is transactional, this in itself poses a huge challenge. The other challenge here that we've got down is not just about your competitors and being focused totally externally with regard to who's the competition for a retail channel, but also thinking about the other channels within your organisation and how they're competing for relevance with the customer and also for organisational investment, which is particularly important when we look at the next piece of information we got here. When you look at the difference in the cost to serve across the channels, Now, the figures I have here are only a guide, and absolutely they'll differ from organisation to organisation. But what they do show is the dramatic differences, or the order of magnitude difference in cost to serve across the channels, with bricks and mortar being at the high end around the $30, going right down to servicing someone via a digital channel at being 3 cents to serve. So in essence, the question is, how does retail deliver something that is unique that justifies the cost? It can be a little counterintuitive, so just a word of warning as we talk about transactions falling away, is that the current thinking is that, of course, as soon as the more people we get onto the digital networks, the less people that we'll have in the contact centre and branch land. But this graph from the same McKinsey report also illustrates how, in fact, increased web usage can increase contact centre and branch interaction. This makes sense when you think about the fact that more customers are looking at their products and services online, and the more likely they are to have a question that may not be able to be answered by the digital channel. So you can see there that certainly thinking that just getting people onto the digital channels may well not have an immediate impact. And this is on the traffic in the direct channels. And this has certainly been the case with at least 3 of our clients, where the business case for migrating customers to digital channels has assumed an immediate drop-off in the traffic in the other channels. This hasn't happened, and as a result, the customer experience has suffered. However, the general consensus is that over time, as digital channel increases its functionality and customers become more comfortable with it, transactions in retail will decline. So given the decline in traditional transactional foot traffic and the rise of other lower cost channels, it begs the question, what will be the future role of retail? So our view is that, and based on all of the research that we've done and talking to many of our clients, is that retail will survive, but only if it delivers a unique experience that sets it apart from the other channels. So there's some critical questions that leaders in retail are going to need to address, and they revolve around defining what is the unique value proposition of retail for a start. And in our experience, this is certainly not clear when we get out there into the networks. You know, what can be done face-to-face that can't be done via other channels? Or what can be done face-to-face that can be done better via better in face-to-face channels than it can be in the other the channels such as contact centre and online? So when we ask our clients these questions, we get lots of responses about eye contact, body language, demonstrating how to use products and services. But these responses are best summed up by a Deloitte report called Inside Tomorrow's Banks, which states the future bank's key role, establishing emotion and trust. Whilst this might be the future, it has certainly not been the case in the past. In fact, virtually all stores and branches in the past, doesn't matter whether it was banking, insurance or health insurance or even to some degree telecommunications, were set up in a way that demonstrated that customers were to be processed and not trusted. So once again, we'll go back to think of the standard branch of yesteryear, or still probably the majority of branches that we have out there in most networks now. They were set up, basically you walk through the front door, you don't see anyone. People are all over behind the counter. You'll find your own way into a queue that ensures that you are going to be processed effectively and you don't lose your lose your place in the line. Once we actually do get up to the counter, it's usually a long counter that forms an impenetrable barrier between the customer and the consultant or the retail staff member. And that's because, you know, in the past it was all about, we've got money on this side of the counter and you don't have money. We don't trust you, therefore we're going to put a barrier between us and you. So what you can see from just looking at the physical layout of our stores is that the future value proposition is going to be very, very different from what it is in the past, and that's going to mean that we need to think about both the capability we have in our stores and our branches, but also the physical layout. So while the role of retail in the future may not be handling the transactions, It will be handling customer interactions where establishing emotion and building trust are paramount, and that will be the value proposition. And this means that while interactions in retail branches and stores will become rarer, they will become more valuable. The McKinsey report sums this up by saying, however, when customers do visit a branch, the stakes will be higher. They will be coming for sales, advice, or to resolve complex service and transaction requirement. And this works really well when you start thinking about this by looking at the work done around the concept of moments of truth. And looking at these moments of truth, we can get an insight into just how valuable retail interactions in the future will be. So a great definition, as on the screen there, of a moment of truth is when a customer has a high amount of emotional energy invested in the outcome. These are the times when organisations must get it right and when an emotional connection and trust are critical to the outcome. As an example of how this works, I'll just tell you a story about taking my family overseas last year. When we were planning the trip, my wife asked me if we had travel insurance that would cover health costs when we were overseas. And I said to her that I thought I remembered something about having a platinum card that meant if I spent some money on it, then we'd automatically be covered with travel insurance while we're overseas. And I said, I think we're right. And of course my wife says to me, are you absolutely sure? I don't want to get overseas. We've got 3 kids, and if something goes wrong and we can't get adequate medical help or get ourselves home, then that's not a situation we want to be in. So I go online and I have another read, and then I think, okay, what I read online says that we're covered. Spend another couple of days. My wife says to me again, have you organised that health insurance? I said, yep, I'm absolutely sure this credit card will cover us. And she says to me again, are you sure? I don't want to be overseas. So you can imagine the next thing I do is I walk into a branch. And I walked into that branch because I knew the branch manager in there. I'd known them for a couple of years, and I wanted them to tell me face to face that I had absolutely read the policy correctly and that we were covered when we went overseas. And of course that branch manager was able to explain that to me. She was also able to relay to me how she'd actually had some customers who'd used this very same travel insurance when they were overseas and had a fantastic outcome. So you can see there, that was a moment of truth. I absolutely needed to know that they understood how emotionally important this was for me, and I needed to have a level of trust that I had the right solution. So the great thing for retail is that these moments of truth fit right into the unique value proposition that retail can deliver, which is about connecting emotionally and building trust. So while we might not be doing all of the transactions that we did in the past, we may well be doing more valuable interactions in the future. And on the bottom of the slide here, you'll see some research from PwC about the value of moments of truth. They're extremely valuable as an indicator of customers' future value to an organisation. So this research shows that 85% of customers that had a positive experience during a moment of truth in the past 24 months have increased their value to the organisation by purchasing more products or upgrading services. Conversely, 70% of people who have had a negative experience during a moment of truth in the past 24 months have reduced their value to the organisation by purchasing products from elsewhere or reducing the amount of services that they have. So in summary, some of the most critical interactions that customers can have with your organisations are highly suited to the unique value proposition of the retail channel. The key question now is, can retail deliver by building emotional connections and trust? And while leaders that we talk to can often identify the critical behaviours of the future, they freely admit that they are not currently demonstrating, or their networks are not currently demonstrating them well enough to set themselves up for the future. So the data we've got on this slide is based on Grist's Retail Sales Effectiveness benchmark, which is based on sending analysts into stores and branches with a complex sales inquiry and assessing the needs-based selling behaviours that are demonstrated by the consultants. So while this slide doesn't show all of the criteria in the benchmark, it does show the critical behaviours that build an emotional connection and trust in a logical sequence of a sales interaction. So starting on the left-hand side with the start of the conversation and moving through some of the behaviours you expect to see as you move towards the close of the conversation on the right-hand side. The data is an average of the retail benchmarking across multiple industries that we've conducted in the last 6 months. So the idea is to give you an insight into how well retail is demonstrating these behaviours currently. As you'll see there, I've starred some of the particular criteria because they're the ones that are particularly important in bringing to life retail's unique value proposition. First one, confirmation of assistance. So we're thinking about a customer here that walks into a retail branch or store and it's a moment of truth. They're highly invested in an emotional way with the outcome of this conversation. And the first thing that they want to hear after letting someone know what their inquiry or their problem is they want absolute clear clarification that the person sitting in front of them has the ability to help them out and has understood their inquiry. And as you can see, we only see that on less than 20% of the interactions that we've assessed. The ability to actually make a personal credibility statement to let the customer know that they are in the front of the right person who knows how to help them with their inquiry or resolve their issue is absolutely paramount early in a call if we're going to build trust and understand the emotions of the customer. Once again, you'll see we only see that demonstrated in a bit over 20% of cases. Moving along, simple things like using the customer's name. Only around 30% of times is the customer's name both gathered and used in an appropriate way. Bridge to the sales discussion, critical element in demonstrating to the customer that they're talking to an expert who's done this before and knows exactly what needs to be done to take them through a process or a conversation that will arrive at the right destination for the customer and solve their issue or inquiry. Less than 20% of times we see that done well in a retail environment. Open questions, absolutely critical to build trust. Customers will not have faith in the solution that you provide to them unless they absolutely know that you understand their current situation. And not just at a logical level, also at an emotional level. And open questions are the most highly weighted element of all of our benchmarks because of the correlation they have to customer outcomes and sales outcomes. Moving along, the ability to demonstrate empathy and enthusiasm for the customer. Now, it might look like the score there of being around 60% is reasonable, but that's in the context of our analysts walking in and overtly demonstrating some sort of emotion that should be picked up by the retail staff and responded to. We see that only happens in 60% of cases. Match benefits to needs. This is a very, very difficult thing to get retail staff to consistently deliver. This is the ability to clearly explain how your products and services work in the context of the customer's specific situation. So actually relaying back to the customer some of the things you found out during discovery that are the real emotional driver for the sale and showing them how your products or services solve those particular issues. And then finally, we move on to things like summarise the conversation, which we know is a key driver of a customer's satisfaction and level of trust with a financial or say a health insurance company or any particular retail outlet. So in summary, if this data shows us that if retail is going to remain relevant by delivering this value proposition that's around better emotional connections and the ability to build trust, it has a long way to go. The historical focus on processing transactions as quickly as possible means that many retail networks are simply not set up either physically, in a physical way, as I explained before, and don't have the people capability to deliver the retail value proposition of the future. So that's hopefully set out for you some of the trends that we're seeing in retail networks. We've also had a look at what some of the research about where retail is going to need to go into the future and what its particular value proposition will be, particularly what will set it apart from other channels, which are lower cost for the organisation, in some ways can be more convenient for the consumer. And we've also then had a look at some of our benchmarking, which is about trying to help organisations understand how well positioned they are from a people capability point of view to deliver what will be required in the future if they're going to remain relevant. So the last piece we want to look at here is what can you do immediately out in your networks to start to understand how you're situated for delivering this value proposition of the future. So the first thing we'd ask you to do is to create a list, have some conversations inside your organisation about what you think are a few critical behaviours that your people will need to demonstrate to set your retail experience apart from the rest. Not just apart from your competitors, but also apart from the other channels that you currently have with your customers. And once you've got that list, then spend some time out in the retail network and observe how often these behaviours are currently being demonstrated. And if you're anything like most of the organisations we work with or the benchmarking that we've been conducting, I think you'll be quite astounded at how few times the behaviours that actually drive your unique value proposition are actually being demonstrated out there in your network. In converse, I'm sure you'll see lots and lots of behaviours that are all about how we behaved and what our function, the retail function, was in the past, not necessarily what it's going to be like in the future. Good idea to get some of your leaders involved in this, and you can, to some degree, do an informal survey yourself just to try and understand how you're positioned with regard to these critical behaviours. Nextly, I'd encourage you to have some conversations with your team and start asking some questions to really try to understand do the people in your retail network, both leaders and frontline staff, actually understand what is this unique value proposition and what sets them apart, and what it is that's going to ensure that you remain relevant as a retail channel in the future. So ask your team to explain why customers would choose retail channel over other channels. Why would they bother? Given that they could be at home and they could jump on a computer and they could jump onto a digital channel, why would they potentially go out of their way to walk into a retail store? Ask your team to describe what is the unique value proposition. What is it that sets us apart? And then if they can answer that one, then a good idea to ask your team to demonstrate the unique retail experience. Ask them to demonstrate with a customer, an actual customer that's in your store with you observing what the actual customer experience needs to look like in the future. And then ask them some questions about how they think the customer felt about that experience and how that experience was different from what they could have got somewhere else. And on the final slide here about some immediate things that you can do is we'd really encourage you to check how well your organisational systems and processes reward and recognise and develop people in line with those behaviours that are going to set retail apart in the future. And what we see is usually organisational systems and processes are more about what retail looked like in the past than what they are in the future. So firstly, and this is a key question for retail, is do you have behavioural measures? So it's really interesting to note that contact centres for years have been assessing the quality of the actual customer interaction via recordings of calls. Yet this is simply not done in retail networks. Now, you might say, well, they've got telephone platforms that help them record, but all of the technology is currently available to record conversations in retail networks. There is no legal limitations on it. There's no problems. Even most customers, in fact, are so used to being asked and told about recordings on contact centres that being asked to record in a retail centre, from our experience, is not a problem for them. It's purely an historical and a cultural issue that we have. And it's certainly our view that complex financial and like insurance type interactions of the future in retail will be recorded, and it's just a matter of time. Also, so that is really about those systems and processes, things like scorecards, reward and recognition. How do we actually reward and recognise our people that's in line with the new behaviours we want them to be demonstrating as opposed to the old? So check your scorecards, check your employment policies and recruitment policies as well. And then the last one we got here is to really assess how much time your retail leaders are spending out on the floor. role modelling and coaching behaviours that set retail apart. If your leaders aren't out there actually doing it and demonstrating it, then you're really not going to be able to get your front line to do it. And the second thing is after that is, whilst the retail leaders may be able to do it, how good are they at being able to actually influence behaviour and coach people such that they can change the behaviour of their team? So these are some of the things that we believe that you can be doing immediately. That's pretty much where we've going to pull the webinar to a close. It's run a little bit under time, which I'm sure is not going to worry any of you. It will allow you to get back to your day-to-day job. So I wanted to thank you very much for your time today. I hope that we've been able to provide some valuable insights that will help you to ensure the success of your retail channel into the future. Following this webinar, we'll be following up by providing you with a calibration sheet that will allow you to assess the quality of conversations taking place in your network, as well as a checklist of some of the critical elements or organisation systems and processes you'll need to consider if you're to encourage your people to build emotional connections and trust with your customers. Also, if you need any more help with regard to understanding where you're at with regard to your ability to deliver on the unique value proposition of retail, or you need some more help to help measure or change the behaviour of your people, then please, we've got our contact details here on the last slide, and you can make contact with Leonardo and he'll only be too happy to have a conversation with you again. So once again, thank you very, very much for your time. I hope we've been able to help, and we're playing a small part in ensuring that retail remains a very relevant customer channel of the future. Thank you.